I turned down the family trip. My sister always sticks me with her twins. At the airport, I quietly slipped away. The next morning, my phone blew up with hundreds of texts. You ruined our vacation. You know, sometimes the people you love the most can hurt you the deepest. I still hear my sister Melissa's bitter words echoing in my mind. You ruined our vacation. But what she called ruin, I called finally standing up for my mom's health when no one else would. And honestly, it changed everything. Growing up in our middle-class Connecticut home, our family had these unspoken roles. Melissa, she was the golden child. The life of the party, charismatic, could charm the socks off anyone. My parents, Diane and Richard, just naturally gravitated to her. And I don't blame them, really. Melissa lights up a room. She's the kind of person who makes friends in line at the grocery store. My dad especially adored her, always laughing at her jokes, prioritizing her needs. Me? I was the responsible one. While Melissa was out winning swim meets and getting crowned prom queen, I was inside, helping mom with dinner, making sure dad's shirts were ironed, and maintaining a steady 3.8 GPA that, honestly, nobody really celebrated. It wasn't that my parents didn't love me, they did. But there was this constant, quiet expectation that I would be the reliable one, the one who never caused trouble or needed attention. As we grew older, those roles just solidified. Melissa went through 3 different college majors, all funded by my parents without a single complaint. When she wanted to spend a year finding herself in Europe after graduation, they helped with that too. Meanwhile, I worked part-time through college, got my accounting degree, and secured a position at a respectable firm in Hartford. My achievements? Acknowledged with quiet nods, never a big celebration. The past 2 years had brought some really tough changes. Mom's health started to deteriorate because of type 2 diabetes complications. It meant daily meds, constant blood sugar monitoring, and doctor visits when things went sideways. Dad tried to help, but he was overwhelmed. So, the responsibility fell to me, researching her condition, organizing her meds, driving her to appointments. Melissa would call occasionally from Boston, where she had her marketing job and busy social life. Her concern was genuine, but it was always fleeting. She'd ask about mom, then immediately pivot to her latest dating drama or work conflict. The idea for a family vacation actually came from Melissa during one of our rare family dinners 3 months ago. Mom was having a particularly rough time, and Melissa announced, "What everyone needs is a change of scenery to reset. We should rent that cabin in Maine that the Andersons went to last summer. It's right on the lake, totally peaceful. Mom could rest, Dad could fish, and we could all just relax together for once." The idea took hold instantly. Dad nodded enthusiastically, and Mom's eyes lit up in a way I hadn't seen in months. "That sounds wonderful," Mom said, reaching for Melissa's hand. "I've been feeling so cooped up lately." I hesitated, though. Summer was crazy busy at my firm, and taking a week off meant working double time before and after. Plus, Mom's health was a huge consideration. Were there medical facilities nearby? Would the cabin be accessible if she had mobility issues? But seeing that hope on Mom's face, I kept all those concerns to myself. "Great, it's settled," Melissa declared, already pulling out her phone. "I'll look into booking it next week." Of course, as weeks passed, the actual planning fell to me. Melissa sent links, but never booked. Dad talked about fishing, but didn't research permits. Mom was excited, but tired easily. So I took over, making lists, booking the cabin, researching nearby medical facilities, planning menus for Mom's diet, and arranging my time off work. 2 days before we were supposed to leave, Melissa called me in a panic. "Olivia, I completely forgot to request vacation days. Can you call the cabin and see if we can move the trip back a week?" I gripped my phone tightly. "Melissa, that's not possible. I've arranged everything based on the original dates. I've taken time off work, which wasn't easy. Mom's doctor appointments are scheduled around this trip. But I really want to come," she whined. "Can't you figure something out?" After a tense conversation, she finally said she'd make it work by taking unpaid time off and facing her boss's disappointment. The way she said it, it sounded like she was making this tremendous sacrifice, and part of me actually felt guilty, even though the whole situation was entirely her own doing. The night before we left, I packed my suitcase, including a separate bag with all of Mom's medications, clearly labeled. I printed maps to the cabin, locations of the nearest hospitals and pharmacies, and a list of restaurants that could accommodate Mom's dietary needs. I was exhausted, but hopeful. Despite the planning stress, I genuinely looked forward to spending quality time with my family. Maybe this trip would help us connect. Maybe Dad would finally notice how much I contributed. Maybe Melissa would step up. With these hopeful thoughts, I finally fell asleep, dreaming of peaceful lake views and harmonious family meals. Little did I know, the reality would be dramatically different. This vacation would become a turning point in how I viewed my family and myself. My alarm jolted me awake at 5:30 a.m. on departure day. We'd agreed to leave by 8 o'clock to avoid traffic. By 6:15, I double-checked Mom's medication bag, created a schedule for her meds, and placed it in a bright red folder. At 7 o'clock, I loaded my bags into my car and drove to my parents' house. Mom greeted me at the door, already dressed, perpetually cold from her diabetes. "Good morning, sweetheart. I've been up since 5, too excited to sleep." Dad was in the kitchen, studying a fishing magazine. "Morning, Olivia. Ready for vacation mode?" I smiled and started organizing the cooler with snacks, including sugar-free options for Mom. The clock ticked past 7:30. Still no Melissa. Dad checked his watch with increasing frequency. At 8:15, he finally called her. I could hear Melissa's voice, bright and unapologetic. "I'm just finishing packing. Give me 30 minutes tops." Dad sighed but didn't protest. "All right, we'll wait. Drive safe." I bit my tongue to avoid pointing out that Melissa lived only 15 minutes away. Instead, I used the extra time to review our route again. Melissa finally breezed in at 9:10, wearing designer sunglasses, carrying an oversized tote and her suitcase. "Sorry everyone. Couldn't decide what to bring, and then I needed to stop for coffee." She held up a takeout cup. Dad took her bags without comment, rearranging everything I had carefully packed to fit Melissa's excessive luggage. Mom just smiled indulgently, happy we were all together. By 9:30, we were on the road, more than an hour and a half behind schedule. Melissa immediately claimed the front passenger seat. "I get carsick in the back," she announced, leaving me in the rear with Mom. I didn't mind. It gave me a chance to keep an eye on her. The drive north was beautiful. Around noon, we stopped at a roadside diner. Mom checked her blood sugar while I reviewed the menu. "The grilled chicken salad should be good for you, Mom," I suggested. "Light on the dressing." Melissa rolled her eyes. "God, Olivia, let Mom eat what she wants for once. We're on vacation." "It's fine," Mom interjected quickly. "The salad sounds perfect." When our food arrived, Melissa immediately complained about her burger. I asked for medium rare, and this is definitely medium well. She pouted, calling the server over and delaying our meal by another 15 minutes. I noticed Mom looking tired, her face slightly pale. "Did you take your new medication?" I asked quietly. She nodded. "Just a little tired from sitting so long. I'll be fine once we get back on the road." After lunch, we continued north. Melissa dozed in the front seat while I kept Mom company in the back. Around 4:30 p.m., Dad turned onto a narrow road, and after several miles of increasingly remote terrain, we rounded a bend and caught our first glimpse of the cabin. It was breathtaking, perched on a gentle slope overlooking a vast, clear lake. "Oh my," Mom breathed, her fatigue momentarily forgotten. "It's perfect." Even Melissa sat up straighter. "Wow. The Andersons weren't exaggerating. This place is gorgeous." I took charge of unloading the car, directing Dad and Melissa to carry bags inside while I organized our supplies. The cabin's interior was just as impressive. I ended up in the smallest bedroom, overlooking the driveway, not the lake. "Olivia, you're okay with the small room in the back, right?" Dad had said, not really asking. I nodded and unpacked, then set about organizing Mom's medication station on the kitchen counter. By early evening, we were settled in. Dad figured out the gas grill, and we enjoyed a simple dinner. As the sun set, the water turned to molten gold. "This was a wonderful idea," Mom said, squeezing Melissa's hand. "Thank you for suggesting it." Melissa beamed, accepting the credit without mentioning my weeks of planning. But in that peaceful moment, I didn't mind. The vacation was off to a good start, despite the hiccups. I allowed myself to hope for the family connection I'd been craving. The next morning, I woke with the sunrise. By 7 a.m., I was in the kitchen, coffee brewing, making whole grain pancakes with fresh berries for Mom, her favorite. Mom joined me around 7:30, looking rested. "Something smells wonderful. You didn't have to go to all this trouble, Olivia." "It's no trouble," I replied truthfully. Dad appeared shortly after, dressed in fishing clothes. "These pancakes for everyone, Olivia?" I nodded. I thought we could all eat together before heading out for the day. "I found a trail map yesterday. There's a beginner-friendly hiking path." "Sounds great," Dad agreed. We'd agreed to meet for breakfast at 8 o'clock and leave for the hike by 9 o'clock. But as 8:30 approached, Melissa still hadn't appeared. Mom set aside a plate of pancakes. "Should I go wake her?" I asked. Dad shook his head. "Let her sleep. She works hard and needs her rest." I bit back a response about how we all worked hard. I started cleaning up. At 9:15, with still no sign of Melissa, Dad grew impatient. "Maybe we should just head out. She can catch up." Mom looked torn. "But she'll be disappointed to miss the hike." We compromised by getting ready. By the time we were truly ready, it was nearly 10 a.m., and the morning's coolness was already giving way to summer heat. Just as we were about to leave, Melissa finally emerged, yawning in pajamas. "Morning, everyone," she said casually, as if we hadn't been waiting for 2 hours. "We were about to leave for the hike," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. Melissa blinked. Oh, right. The hike. Sorry, I completely forgot. Give me 15 minutes. 15 minutes stretched to 30. By then, it was nearly 10:45 and the temperature had risen significantly. We'll need to shorten the route, I said, studying the map. It's getting too hot for the full loop, especially for Mom. Melissa frowned. But I wanted to see the lookout point. We can try again tomorrow if we start on time, I suggested, avoiding looking directly at her. The abbreviated hike was still pleasant, but Mom's pace slowed further halfway through, her breathing labored. Let's take a break, I suggested, guiding her to a fallen log. She sank down gratefully. Just need to catch my breath. I handed her water and discreetly checked for other symptoms. How do you feel otherwise? Any dizziness? I'm fine, Olivia, she assured me. Just out of shape. Dad and Melissa doubled back. Everything okay? Dad asked. Just taking a short rest, Mom replied before I could speak. We returned to the cabin past noon. Mom went to lie down. I checked her blood sugar, slightly elevated. Dad headed out fishing and Melissa announced she was going to sunbathe. Around 2 p.m., we gathered for lunch on the deck. Mom looked refreshed. Dad proudly showed pictures of a small bass he caught. I thought we could try that seafood restaurant in town for dinner tonight, I suggested. Actually, Melissa interjected, I met some people while I was sunbathing, local guys with a boat. They recommended a different place, the Lobster Trap. Supposed to be the best seafood for miles. Did you check if they have menu options for diabetics? I asked. Melissa rolled her eyes. Not everything has to revolve around dietary restrictions, Olivia. I'm sure they have salads or something. Dad predictably sided with Melissa. The Lobster Trap sounds great. Good to get recommendations from locals. I let it go, making a mental note to check the menu online. Mom caught my eye and gave a small shrug that seemed to say, it's not worth arguing about. After lunch, Melissa disappeared into her room, emerging an hour later in a new outfit. By the way, she announced casually, I might not join you all tomorrow for the lighthouse tour. The guys I met invited me to go out on their boat. But we planned this together, Mom said, a note of disappointment in her voice. I was looking forward to all of us seeing the lighthouse. I know, Mom, but how often do I get to go boating with cute local guys? You understand, right? Melissa's tone was wheedling, the same one she'd used successfully throughout childhood. I guess so, Mom conceded. Just be careful with strangers, honey. I couldn't keep quiet any longer. Melissa, we came here for a family vacation. We've only been here one day and you're already making separate plans. Don't be so controlling, Olivia. Melissa snapped. Just because you have no social life doesn't mean I have to be glued to the family 24/7. That's enough, Dad intervened, but his tone was milder than if I had spoken to Melissa that way. Melissa can spend one day doing her own thing. We'll still have plenty of family time. The exchange left a sour taste. As we prepared for dinner, I saw Melissa texting rapidly, a small smile on her lips. She was already mentally checked out. The Lobster Trap was touristy, with long waits and a limited menu. Mom struggled to find suitable options and settled for dry, overcooked fish. Melissa dominated the conversation with stories about her job and friends, barely asking about anyone else's life. Dad encouraged her while Mom smiled tiredly. I sat quietly, observing the familiar dynamics, Melissa at the center, Dad facilitating her spotlight, Mom peacekeeping, and me on the periphery. I'd hoped the scenery might shift these patterns, but so far, the vacation was only reinforcing them. Back at the cabin, Melissa announced she was taking a moonlight walk along the shore. Don't wait up, she called, phone in hand. I suspected she was meeting her new friends. Dad turned on the TV, Mom settled with a book. I retreated to my small bedroom, lying awake, listening to the unfamiliar night sounds, wondering if I was the only one who felt the undercurrent of tension. The third morning dawned bright and clear. Perfect conditions for the boat trip we had reserved weeks ago. Mom had been particularly excited. I started coffee and blueberry muffins. Mom and Dad emerged around 8:30, drawn by the smells. Mom looked well rested. These muffins are wonderful, Olivia. You're spoiling us. Perfect day for boating, Dad said. What time do we need to leave? We should head out by 10:15, I replied. At 9:30, Dad knocked on Melissa's door, no answer. He opened it. She's not here. Her bed hasn't been slept in. A flicker of concern crossed Mom's face. Do you think she's okay? I'm sure she's fine, Dad said, but immediately pulled out his phone. Voicemail. He left a message reminding her about the boat tour. By 10 o'clock, there was still no sign of Melissa, and her absence created a nervous atmosphere. Dad tried calling again. Maybe she stayed with those friends she met, he suggested, looking uncomfortable. Mom's worry was more visible now. She should have let us know. That's not like her. I refrained from pointing out that it was exactly like Melissa. I busied myself packing a cooler for the boat trip. As 10:15 approached, I noticed something else troubling. Dad, where are the car keys? We should get going. Dad patted his pockets, then frowned. They should be on the hook by the door. A quick search confirmed it. The keys were gone. And so was the car. Melissa had taken it without asking, without a note, without considering that we might need it. Dad's expression darkened. She knows we have the boat tour today. Why would she take the car without saying anything? The situation grew more concerning when Mom opened the refrigerator. Olivia, didn't you put my backup insulin in here? I can't find it. A quick inventory revealed the problem. Her emergency insulin was missing. It should have been in the refrigerator door. Most of her daily medications were still there, but the insulin she might need in case of a blood sugar spike was gone. With a sinking feeling, I realized it must be in the small cooler bag I had packed for emergencies, the same bag that was now in the trunk of our missing car. I need to call Melissa again, Dad said, his voice tight with anger. This time, he left a more urgent message. Melissa, call us immediately. Mom's insulin is in the car and we need it. Plus, we're going to miss our boat reservation. The next hour was tense. We tried calling Melissa repeatedly, each call going to voicemail. Mom insisted she was fine for now, she'd taken her morning dose. But the missing emergency insulin was a safety concern we couldn't ignore. At 10:45, I made the decision to cancel our boat tour reservation. The marina was too far to walk, especially in the growing heat, and we couldn't risk losing our deposit. The cancellation fee was substantial, but there was no alternative. I'm sorry about the tour, Mom, I said, seeing her disappointment. It's not your fault, dear, Mom patted my hand. I'm more concerned about Melissa. This isn't responsible behavior. Dad paced the deck. When she gets back, we're going to have a serious conversation about consideration for others. My primary concern was Mom's medication. I found a water taxi service online that could pick us up from our dock. I'm going to see about getting to town, I announced. We need to have backup insulin just in case. Dad looked ready to object, to suggest waiting longer for Melissa, but Mom nodded firmly. That's a good idea, Olivia. Better safe than sorry. The cost was more than I wanted to spend, but this was about Mom's health. 20 minutes and a phone call later, a small motorboat pulled up to our dock. The boat ride to town was beautiful, despite the circumstances. At the pharmacy, I explained our situation. The pharmacist was understanding, and though they couldn't provide a full replacement, they gave us enough emergency insulin to last the remainder of our vacation. The cost was high without our regular insurance, but I paid without hesitation. We returned to the cabin around 2:30 p.m. to find the car still missing and no sign of Melissa. Mom was looking tired from the outing, so I helped her to the couch. Dad resumed his anxious pacing. Finally, at nearly 4 p.m., we heard the sound of tires on gravel. Through the window, I saw our car pull up with Melissa at the wheel. She emerged, looking relaxed and happy, wearing a new sundress and carrying shopping bags. Dad met her at the door. Where have you been? He demanded, his voice tight. We've been calling you for hours. Melissa looked genuinely surprised. My phone died, and I forgot my charger. Did you need something? Did we need something? I interjected, unable to contain myself. We had a boat tour scheduled for today, the one we've been planning for weeks. You took the car without telling anyone, with Mom's insulin in it. Melissa's expression shifted from surprise to defensive irritation. How was I supposed to know her insulin was in the car? And I thought the boat thing was tomorrow. Even if it was tomorrow, you don't take our only vehicle without letting anyone know, Dad said. We were worried about you, and we needed the car. Mom joined us, moving slowly. Honey, my emergency medication was in the cooler in the trunk. We didn't know where you were or when you'd be back. For a brief moment, Melissa looked contrite. I'm sorry about the insulin, Mom. I didn't know. Then her expression brightened. But look what I found in town. She held up her shopping bags. The cutest boutique. I bought you a handmade scarf, Mom. The swift change of subject was classic Melissa. Deflect, distract, charm her way out of accountability. Usually it worked, especially with Dad. But this time, the issue was too serious. Melissa, I said firmly. We had to hire a water taxi to get to town so we could get emergency medication. We lost our deposit on the boat tour. This isn't about forgetting or your phone dying. It's about basic consideration for others, especially Mom's health needs. You're overreacting as usual. Melissa snapped. Mom is fine. Nothing happened. And I said I was sorry about the insulin, but how was I supposed to know it was in the car? You should have asked before taking our only transportation, I insisted. Or left a note. Or made sure your phone was charged. Any of those would have been the responsible thing to do. Dad stepped between us, his mediator role firmly in place. All right, that's enough. What's done is done. Melissa, please be more thoughtful in the future. Olivia, let's move past this. We still have most of the day ahead of us. I noticed he had barely chastised Melissa while asking me to drop the subject. The familiar pattern stung, especially given the seriousness. Mom, ever the peacemaker, suggested a late lunch on the deck. The meal was strained. Melissa chattered about her shopping, barely acknowledging the worry and inconvenience she had caused. By dessert, she had shifted the narrative entirely, implying she'd done us a favor by discovering these local gems. After lunch, I found Mom in her room, looking more tired than she had that morning. Are you feeling okay? I asked. Just a bit run down from all the excitement, she assured me. But she was checking her blood sugar again. The reading was higher than ideal, likely from the stress. As I helped her with her pills, a wave of protective anger washed over me. This vacation was supposed to help Mom relax, not add stress that affected her health. That evening, I stayed close to Mom, monitoring her condition discreetly. Her blood sugar eventually stabilized. From the kitchen, I could hear Melissa on the deck, talking and laughing on her phone. The sound grated on my nerves. Dad joined me in the kitchen. Olivia, he began awkwardly. I know today didn't go as planned, but try not to be too hard on your sister. She's young and enjoying her vacation. She's 33, Dad, I replied quietly, keeping my voice low. That's not young when it comes to basic responsibility and consideration for others. Mom could have had a serious issue today. Dad sighed. I know, and I've spoken to her about it, but you know how she is. The more we push, the more she pushes back. Let's just try to salvage the rest of the vacation, okay? I nodded, not trusting myself to speak further without saying something I might regret. But I couldn't shake the feeling that a line had been crossed today. And that worse was yet to come. The fourth day of our vacation dawned overcast and humid, matching my mood. Still, I was determined to make the most of it for Mom's sake. I planned a picnic by a quiet cove, an easy walk for her. By 9 a.m., I was in the kitchen preparing food, carefully including options for Mom's diet, packing her medication, extra water, and a first aid kit. Dad emerged around 9:30. Picnic lunch, I explained. It's an easy walk for Mom, and the tables are in a shaded area. Mom smiled. That sounds lovely. Dad volunteered to find picnic supplies. Once again, no sign of Melissa. I decided not to count on her. But Mom still knocked gently on her door. Melissa, honey, we're planning a picnic lunch if you'd like to join us. To my surprise, Melissa's door opened almost immediately. She was already dressed. A picnic? Sure, I could do that. What time? Mom looked pleased. Around 11 o'clock. Perfect, Melissa replied, attention still partly on her phone. That gives me time to finish answering these work emails. I felt a flicker of hope. By 10:45, all preparations were complete. At 11:05, Melissa finally emerged. Ready, she announced cheerfully. Then, glancing at her phone, she added, oh, by the way, I hope it's okay. I invited a couple of people to join us. They're bringing some local craft beer. My hope for a peaceful family day deflated instantly. You invited strangers to our family picnic? Without asking anyone. Melissa rolled her eyes. They're not strangers. They're the guys I met the other day, Jake and Troy. And Jake's sister Aubrey is coming, too. They're locals who know all the best spots. Dad, predictably, seemed unbothered. The more the merrier, right? And craft beer sounds great. Mom looked less certain but nodded. Of course, it's fine. I'll just grab a few more plates. I bit my tongue and recalculated the food. It would stretch barely. More concerning was Melissa had, again, made a unilateral decision affecting all of us. We set out for the picnic spot, me carrying the heavy cooler. The area was lovely. I set up our spot, spreading the tablecloth. Melissa checked her phone. They should be here any minute. They're coming by boat. Sure enough, within minutes, a sleek motorboat pulled up to a small pier. 3 people disembarked, 2 men and a woman. Introductions were made quickly. Jake, tall and tan. Troy, muscular with tattoos, holding a 6-pack of local beer. Aubrey, Jake's sister. So great to meet Melissa's family, Jake said, shaking Dad's hand. She's told us all about you. Dad looked delighted, immediately engaging Troy in conversation about brewing. Mom seemed to be enjoying Aubrey's company, though I noticed she was eating less than usual, possibly self-conscious about her dietary restrictions with strangers present. Trouble began when Jake, seeing Mom decline certain foods, asked bluntly, are you on some kind of special diet? Melissa mentioned something about health issues. Mom looked uncomfortable. Just managing diabetes, she said quietly. Nothing to worry about. My uncle had diabetes, Jake continued, seemingly oblivious to Mom's discomfort. Lost a foot to it eventually. Nasty disease. Mom's face paled, and I intervened quickly. We manage it very carefully. Mom's doing great with her treatment plan. But Jake wasn't finished. You should try this natural supplement my uncle started taking. Really helped with his blood sugar. My buddy sells it. That's very kind, Mom replied diplomatically, but I prefer to stick with my doctor's recommendations. Jake shrugged. Suit yourself, but these pharmaceutical companies just want to keep you sick and dependent on their drugs. The natural stuff works better. I felt a surge of protective anger. This stranger was giving dangerous medical advice to my mother within minutes of meeting her. Before I could respond, Melissa jumped in. Jake owns a health food store in town, she explained, as if that qualified him. The conversation shifted as Troy produced a flask of homemade moonshine. Dad accepted a plastic cup, as did Melissa and Aubrey. Mom and I politely declined. As the afternoon progressed, the dynamic became increasingly uncomfortable. Jake, Troy, and Aubrey consumed most of the beer and moonshine, growing louder and more overbearing. Melissa matched their drinking, giggling at their jokes. Tell them about that time you stole your dad's car in high school, Mel. Troy encouraged, using a nickname I'd never heard. Melissa launched into a story I'd never heard either, about taking dad's car without permission at 16, going to a party. The way she told it, it sounded like a hilarious adventure, not dangerous, illegal behavior. Dad looked uncomfortable. I don't remember that happening, he said. Oh, you never knew. Melissa laughed. I got the car back before you woke up. Mom caught me, but she never told you. Mom frowned. Melissa, that's not remember how you made me promise never to do it again, and we kept it our little secret? Melissa continued, cutting Mom off. You were always covering for me. I watched Mom's face, seeing the hurt and confusion. This story was clearly fabricated, Melissa rewriting our family history to impress her new friends. The final straw came when Troy and Jake began tossing a frisbee nearby, becoming increasingly reckless as the alcohol took hold. A wild throw from Troy sent the frisbee crashing onto our table, knocking over drinks and scattering food. Sorry about that, Troy called, not sounding particularly sorry. Neither he nor Jake made any move to help clean up the mess. As I scrambled to salvage what I could, I noticed Mom looking pale and tired. I discreetly checked her blood sugar, lower than it should be. She needed to eat something substantial soon. Mom, are you feeling okay? I asked quietly. She nodded but admitted, I'm a bit tired, and I should probably eat something more substantial then. These snacks. I turned to the group. I think we should head back to the cabin. Mom needs to rest. Melissa frowned. We just got here. It's barely been 2 hours. Your mom's not looking great, Aubrey commented, more observant than her brother and friend. Maybe you should take her back. Jake waved dismissively. She's fine. Just give her one of those granola bars. The casual dismissal of Mom's health needs by this stranger was the last straw. I stood up, my voice firm. We're going back now. Mom needs proper food and rest. Melissa looked embarrassed. Olivia, stop being so dramatic. Mom, are you really not feeling well, or is Olivia overreacting as usual? Mom, never one to create conflict, hesitated. I am a bit tired, she admitted. But you can stay if you want, Melissa. Dad can help me back. Actually, I said, looking pointedly at the mess, I think we should all go. The picnic is pretty much ruined anyway. Melissa glared at me, but Troy interrupted. Hey, no worries. Why don't we all head back to your cabin? We can bring the boat around to your dock. Got plenty more beer on board. Alarm bells rang in my head. The last thing Mom needed was 3 intoxicated strangers invading our cabin. That's not necessary, I said firmly. We have plans for the evening. No, we don't. Melissa contradicted. That's a great idea, Troy. You guys can come see our awesome cabin and hang out on the deck. Dad looked torn, glancing between Mom's tired face and Melissa's excited one. To my surprise, he sided with me. I think today isn't the best day for more company. Your mother needs to rest. Melissa's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. Fine, but I'm staying with my friends. I'll catch a ride with them. The walk back to the cabin was tense and silent. Dad supported Mom. I carried our picnic supplies, leaving nothing behind despite Troy's assurance they would clean up later. Once we reached the cabin, I immediately prepared a proper meal for Mom and made sure she took her medication. While Dad helped Mom settle in, I cleaned up, my frustration building. We had planned a simple family picnic, and Melissa had turned it into a chaotic social event with strangers who disrespected our mother's health. Around 6 p.m., I heard a boat approaching our dock. Looking out the window, I saw the same motorboat, now carrying Melissa, Jake, Troy, and Aubrey. They were laughing loudly, clearly more intoxicated. Dad came to stand beside me. Looks like Melissa brought her friends back anyway, he observed, his tone unreadable. Dad, Mom needs quiet to rest. These people were disrespectful about her health, and they're clearly drunk. We can't have them here. Dad sighed. Let me talk to Melissa. He went out to the dock. I watched as Dad spoke to Melissa, who responded with animated gestures. Then, to my dismay, Dad seemed to relent, gesturing toward the cabin. Minutes later, the whole group stomped onto our deck. Melissa leading the way with a triumphant expression. Dad followed, looking resigned. Troy carried more beer, and Jake had a portable speaker already blaring music. Mom's trying to rest, I said as they entered, keeping my voice level with effort. We'll keep it down, Melissa promised, though the volume of her voice belied her words. We're just going to hang out on the deck. You don't have to join us if you're going to be a buzzkill. The next hour was excruciating. From the kitchen, where I prepared a light dinner, I could hear the increasing volume of music, laughter, and conversation. Mom emerged from the bedroom, looking troubled. When Aubrey came inside to use the bathroom, she paused by the kitchen. Your sister is something else, she commented. She told us you guys are loaded, said your dad owns some big company back home. I stared at her in confusion. That's not true. My dad is a high school science teacher. Aubrey looked surprised. Oh, she said you guys own multiple vacation homes and were thinking of buying property up here. The realization that Melissa was lying to impress these people added another layer to my frustration. When Aubrey rejoined the group outside, I heard Troy's voice carrying through the open deck door. So, when are you going to cook that fancy dinner you promised us, Mel? I'm starving. Melissa's reply was clearly audible. Olivia will make something for everyone. She loves playing house mother. It's her whole personality. That was when I reached my breaking point. I walked onto the deck where the four of them were lounging, Dad sitting uncomfortably at the edge. Melissa, I said, my voice tight with controlled anger. Can I speak with you inside, please? She rolled her eyes dramatically for her friend's benefit. Whatever it is, just say it here, Finn. I bristled. I'm not cooking dinner for your friends. In fact, I think they should leave. Mom isn't feeling well. Their noise is disturbing her rest and frankly, they've been disrespectful since they arrived. Jake sat up straighter. Whoa, that's harsh. We're just having a good time. At our family cabin, during our family vacation, while my mother, who has health issues, is trying to rest, I pointed out. Melissa invited you without consulting anyone, and you've overstayed your welcome. Melissa jumped to her feet. You don't get to decide who's welcome here. This is Dad's cabin rental, not yours. Dad cleared his throat. Actually, Olivia has a point. It is getting late, and your mother needs quiet. Melissa's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. You're taking her side? After I finally made some friends who could show us the best parts of this place. Troy stood up, swaying slightly. No worries. We can tell when we're not wanted. Come on, Mel. Grab your stuff. You can crash at my place tonight. That suggestion created an entirely new problem. Melissa, you are not going to a stranger's house to crash after drinking all day. I said firmly. I'm 33 years old. You don't get to tell me what to do. Melissa shouted, loud enough that I was certain Mom could hear. Dad finally took a stand. Melissa, you're staying here tonight. Your friends need to leave. What followed was an ugly scene. Melissa argued and pleaded while her friends gathered their things with obvious annoyance. Jake muttered something about uptight family. Troy tried to convince Melissa to leave one more time, but Dad physically stepped between them, his teacher's authority finally making an appearance. After they departed, Melissa stormed to her room and slammed the door. Dad slumped into a deck chair, looking exhausted. I went inside to check on Mom, finding her sitting at the kitchen table with tears in her eyes. I'm sorry about all that, I said, sitting beside her. This isn't how I imagined our family vacation, she said softly. I just wanted us all to spend time together and enjoy each other's company. As I comforted Mom, the weight of the past 4 days settled heavily on me. The pattern was clear. Melissa would continue to prioritize her own desires. Dad would enable her until pushed to the absolute limit. Mom and I would be expected to accommodate and forgive without complaint. But for the first time, I was questioning whether I wanted to participate in this dynamic any longer. The morning of our 5th day dawned gray and drizzly. Mom and Dad were having coffee when I emerged. There. Conversation stopped abruptly. Melissa's door remained firmly closed. Good morning, I said, joining them. How are you feeling today, Mom? Better after a full night's rest, she replied, but the strain of yesterday's events was visible. Dad cleared his throat. I was thinking we could drive to that lighthouse today. The rain is supposed to clear by noon. I nodded, appreciating his attempt to salvage something. That sounds nice. The tentative peace was shattered when Melissa finally emerged around 10 a.m., looking hungover but defiant. She poured coffee. Morning. What's the plan for today? Dad explained the lighthouse idea. Melissa listened, then said, Actually, I made other plans. Jake and Troy are picking me up at noon. They're taking me to this hidden beach that only locals know about. The same people who had been asked to leave just last night were now expected to be welcomed back. I exchanged a glance with Dad, who looked troubled but hesitant to create more conflict. Melissa, Mom began gently. We'd really like to do something as a family today. We've barely spent any time all together on this trip. We've been together plenty. Melissa countered. I'm allowed to have some fun on my vacation too, you know. Of course you are, Dad said placatingly. But after yesterday what? Melissa interrupted. After Olivia was rude to my friends and embarrassed me? After you kicked them out like they were criminals instead of people just trying to show us a good time. Dad's placating approach clearly wasn't working. So, I decided to be more direct. After they disrespected Mom's health needs, drank excessively on our property, and left us to clean up their mess, I said. Those people aren't friends, Melissa. You met them 3 days ago. Melissa rolled her eyes. Here we go again with Saint Olivia, the guardian of all things proper and responsible. Some of us actually know how to have fun and make connections with new people. This isn't about fun, I replied, struggling to keep my voice level. It's about respect for the family and consideration for Mom's needs. We came here for a family vacation, and you've spent most of it avoiding us or bringing strangers into our space. Oh, please. Melissa scoffed. Mom is fine. You're just being controlling as usual. Dad intervened. Let's all calm down. Melissa, we would really appreciate it if you join us for the lighthouse today. Your friends can wait until tomorrow. Melissa hesitated. For a moment, I thought she might agree. Then her phone chimed. She checked it, and her expression hardened. They're already on their way. I can't cancel now. Yes, you can, I said. You can text them back and explain that you're spending the day with your family. I don't want to. Melissa shot back. I want to go to this beach with people who are actually fun to be around. Mom's soft voice cut through the tension. Melissa, honey, I've been looking forward to the lighthouse. I thought we could take some family photos there. The hurt in her voice was unmistakable. For a brief moment, Melissa looked conflicted. Then she squared her shoulders. I'm sorry, Mom, but I already committed to this. They're bringing a picnic and everything. I'll do the lighthouse thing with you another day. There won't be another day, I pointed out. We're leaving in 2 days, and tomorrow is supposed to be stormy. Well, that's not my fault, is it? Melissa retorted. Maybe you should have planned better. The unfairness of that statement, when I had done all the planning, was the final straw. Years of built-up resentment and frustration broke through my usual restraint. I did plan, I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to control it. I planned this entire vacation while you did nothing. I researched activities that would work for Mom's health needs. I packed her medications and monitored her condition. I made restaurant reservations and scheduled tours. I even packed special foods that she can eat safely. Melissa looked taken aback by my outburst, but quickly recovered. Nobody asked you to do all that. You just like controlling everything. No, I countered, years of unspoken thoughts finally finding voice. I do it because someone has to be responsible. And it's never going to be you, is it? Not when you were 16 and Dad had to pick you up from parties where you were drunk. Not when you were 22 and Mom and Dad had to pay off your credit card debt. And not now at 33, when you can't even be bothered to show up on time for family activities. Olivia. Dad warned, but I was beyond stopping. Do you have any idea what Mom's been through this year with her health? Do you know how scared she was when she was hospitalized in March? Of course you don't, because you sent flowers instead of visiting, then called for 5 minutes before you had to rush to a party. Melissa's face flushed. That's not fair. I live in Boston. I can't just drop everything every time Mom has a health issue. I live an hour further away than you do. I pointed out. But I managed to be there. I always manage to be there because that's what family does. So I'm not family now? Melissa's voice had taken on a dangerous edge. You're family when it's convenient for you, I replied. When you need money or a place to stay or someone to listen to your latest drama. But when the family needs you, when Mom needs you, you're nowhere to be found. Melissa turned to her parents, tears welling in her eyes, tears I recognized as her go-to tactic. Are you going to let her talk to me like this? Dad looked deeply uncomfortable. Olivia, that's enough. Your sister, no, it's not enough. I interrupted, something I rarely did with my father. For years, we've all tiptoed around Melissa's feelings while ignoring everyone else's. We make excuses for her selfishness. We clean up her messes. We rearrange our lives to accommodate her wins. And what has it gotten us? A family vacation where Mom's health is jeopardized, Dad's stressed, and I'm treated like a servant, expected to cook and clean for Melissa's random friends. Mom's quiet voice broke through my tirade. Olivia, please. I'm sorry, Mom, but it needs to be said, I continued, gentler now. I love all of you, but this dynamic isn't healthy for anyone. Melissa needs to hear that her actions affect others, especially you. Melissa's tears had turned to rage. You think you're so perfect, don't you? The responsible daughter, the good one. Well, guess what? Everyone is sick of your controlling, judgmental attitude. You don't get to dictate how I live my life or spend my vacation. No, I don't, I agreed. But when your choices directly impact Mom's health and well-being, that's where I draw the line. Mom is fine, Melissa shouted. Stop using her health as an excuse to control everything. At that, Mom herself stood up. I am not fine, she said with unusual firmness. I haven't been fine for months. My blood sugar has been all over the place. I'm constantly tired, and I worry about every bit of food I put in my mouth. This vacation was supposed to be a chance for me to relax and enjoy my family, but instead, I've been stressed and anxious since we arrived. Melissa stared at Mom, momentarily speechless. Dad placed a hand on Mom's shoulder, but she gently shrugged it off. Diane, he began, using her name in that special way. Reserved for serious moments. No, Richard, Mom said. I need to say this. I love both my daughters equally. But Olivia is right about one thing. This vacation has become all about managing Melissa's needs and moods rather than enjoying our time together. Melissa's face crumpled. So, you're taking her side? After everything I've done to make this vacation fun, what exactly have you done? I asked incredulously. Name one thing you've contributed to this vacation besides stress and drama. I found this place. Melissa shot back. This was my idea. Finding a cabin online and then doing absolutely nothing to make it happen doesn't count as a contribution. I retorted. Dad paid for it. I booked it. Researched activities. Packed supplies. You ruined it is what you did. Melissa shouted. You've turned what should have been a fun family vacation into a military operation with your schedules and rules and judgment. You've made everyone miserable with your controlling behavior. Dad finally found his voice. Melissa, that's enough. Olivia has worked very hard to make this vacation pleasant for everyone, especially your mother. If anyone has ruined things, it's he cut himself off, but the implication was clear. Melissa gasped, genuinely shocked to hear her father come so close to blaming her. I can't believe this, she said, her voice suddenly small. My entire family is turned against me. No one is turned against you, I said wearily. We just want you to grow up and think about someone besides yourself for once. The sound of a boat motor approaching our dock broke the tense silence. Melissa's phone chimed. That's Jake and Troy, she said, her voice cold. I'm going with them. Don't wait up. Melissa, please. Mom called as she headed for the door. Stay and talk this through. There's nothing to talk about, Melissa replied without turning around. Olivia has made her feelings clear, and apparently, you all agree with her. I know when I'm not wanted. With that dramatic exit line, she stormed out of the cabin. After Melissa departed, the cabin fell into a heavy silence. Mom sank back into her chair, utterly drained. Dad paced the living room, running his hands through his hair, a gesture of frustration I'd rarely seen. I'll make some fresh coffee, I said, needing something practical to do. Dad came to stand in the kitchen doorway. Did you mean what you said about leaving tomorrow? I nodded, not trusting myself to speak without my voice breaking. I'm sorry, Olivia, he said, the words coming out haltingly. I didn't realize how much pressure you've been under. It's not just this vacation, I replied, keeping my eyes on the coffee maker. It's been our family dynamic for as long as I can remember. I just reached my breaking point. Mom joined us, her eyes red-rimmed, but dry now. I should have seen it, she said softly. I've leaned on you so much, especially since my diagnosis. It wasn't fair. I don't mind helping, Mom, I assured her. I love you and I want to support you. What I mind is that it's always assumed I'll handle everything while Melissa gets a free pass to do whatever she wants. Mom reached for my hand. I never meant to make you feel taken for granted. I know you didn't, I said, squeezing her hand. But that's what happened, and I need some space to figure out what comes next. The lighthouse trip was quietly abandoned. The three of us spent the afternoon in a strange, subdued state. I prepared a simple dinner, which we ate mostly in silence. The absence of Melissa's usual chatter and drama felt oddly conspicuous, like a missing tooth your tongue keeps finding. As I was cleaning up, Dad approached me hesitantly. Are you sure about leaving tomorrow? I nodded. I need to, for me. What should I tell Melissa? The question irritated me, still worried about Melissa's feelings even now, but I kept my tone neutral. Tell her the truth. That I needed some space after our argument. Dad nodded, looking older than I'd ever seen him. I've made a lot of mistakes with you girls, he admitted. I thought I was being a good father by keeping the peace. But I was really just enabling bad patterns. The acknowledgement, however late in coming, meant something. It's not too late to change those patterns, Dad. That night, I packed my belongings methodically. As I folded clothes, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and relief. The decision to leave early was painful but necessary, a declaration of my own worth and needs that had been a long time coming. I went to bed early but lay awake for hours, wondering if I was doing the right thing. Around midnight, I heard the distant sound of a boat motor. Melissa returning, presumably. No voices or door slams, just the quiet click of her bedroom door closing. Morning came with pale sunlight. I dressed quickly and carried my bags to the car before joining my parents for breakfast. Melissa's door remained closed. I made your favorite blueberry pancakes, Mom said, her smile brave but her eyes sad. Thank you, I said, genuinely touched. We ate, making stilted small talk. As I was helping clear the dishes, Melissa's door finally opened. She appeared in the kitchen doorway, looking subdued. You're really leaving, she asked, her voice lacking its usual edge. Yes, I replied simply. I think it's for the best. She nodded, not meeting my eyes. Safe drive. It wasn't an apology, but it wasn't an attack either. It was almost conciliatory. The goodbyes were emotional but restrained. Mom hugged me tightly, whispering, call me when you arrive safely. Dad's embrace was awkward but heartfelt. Melissa hung back, offering only a stiff nod. As I drove away from the cabin, watching it recede in my rearview mirror, I felt a strange sense of both loss and liberation. For the first time in my adult life, I had chosen my own needs over family expectations. The road ahead was uncertain, but it was mine to travel on my own terms. The small inn I found about 30 miles from our family cabin was nothing special. A standard roadside establishment. But it offered something I desperately needed, space to think. After checking in, I sat on the edge of the bed and let the emotions I'd been controlling wash over me. Tears came hot and fast, a release of tension and grief for the family vacation that should have been, for the relationship with my sister I'd never had, for the years of feeling invisible despite always being needed. When the waves subsided, I took a long shower, ordered a pizza, and spent the evening watching mindless television. The simplicity was healing in its own way. No schedule to maintain, no one's needs to anticipate, no tension to navigate. I called Mom, as promised, to let her know I'd arrived safely. The conversation was brief but gentle. "Get some rest," Mom said before hanging up. "You deserve it." The next day, I slept later than I had in years. After a leisurely breakfast, I spent the morning catching up on work emails. In the afternoon, I hiked alone in a nearby state park, setting my own pace. The solitude was refreshing rather than lonely. As I stood on an overlook, watching a hawk circle, I realized how rarely I experienced this kind of unstructured freedom. That evening, my phone rang. Mom's number. I answered immediately, a reflexive spike of worry. "Is everything okay?" I asked. "Yes and no." Mom replied, her voice strained. "I had a bit of a blood sugar issue this afternoon. Nothing too serious, but I was pretty shaky for a while." Concern flooded me. "What happened? Did you take your medication? Where was Dad? Is there a doctor nearby?" "Olivia, breathe," Mom said gently. "I'm fine now." My blood sugar dropped suddenly. Probably from the stress of everything, to be honest. "Your father helped me get some juice and crackers, and I stabilized. I wanted to hear your voice." The admission touched me deeply. "I'm glad you called. How are things otherwise?" Mom sighed. "Quiet. Your father took the boat out fishing. Melissa has been gone most of the day with those friends of hers." My jaw tightened. "Even after what happened?" "After your health scare." "She doesn't know about it," Mom admitted. "She left before it happened, and we haven't seen her since." The old anger flared, but I tamped it down. "Mom, maybe you should come join me at this inn? It's not fancy, but it's comfortable, and I could take care of you properly." There was a pause. "That's very sweet, but I think I need to stay and see this through with your sister. Running away won't solve the underlying issues." Her words, though not intended as such, felt like a gentle rebuke of my own decision to leave. "I didn't run away," I said, more defensively than I intended. "I removed myself from a toxic situation." "Of course you did, honey," Mom said quickly. "And you were right to do it." We talked a while longer. By the time we hung up, I felt both better for having talked to her and unsettled by the news of her health episode. The next morning, I woke early and found myself packing my bags without having consciously made the decision to return to the cabin. Something in Mom's voice had triggered my protective instincts. Despite my determination to prioritize my own needs, I couldn't ignore the possibility that Mom might need me. I checked out of the inn and pointed my car back toward the lake, telling myself I was just going to check on Mom and could always leave again if the situation remained unchanged. As I pulled into the cabin's gravel driveway, I was surprised to see only Dad's SUV present. Melissa's rental car was nowhere in sight. Dad answered my knock, surprise evident on his face. "Olivia, we weren't expecting you back." "I was worried about Mom after her blood sugar incident," I explained. "Is she okay?" Dad stepped back to let me in. "She's better today. The doctor said it was likely a combination of stress and missing a meal." I stopped in the doorway. "Doctor? You took her to a doctor?" Dad nodded. "I insisted after she nearly fainted yesterday. There's a medical center in town, the same one you researched." They were very helpful. The fact that Dad had taken charge of the situation and followed through on getting Mom medical attention was unexpected but heartening. "Where is she now?" "Resting in the bedroom." He hesitated, then added, "She'll be happy to see you." I carried my bag inside and went directly to the master bedroom. Mom was propped up against pillows. Her face brightened when she saw me. "Olivia, what a wonderful surprise." I sat on the edge of the bed. "I was worried after our call yesterday. How are you feeling?" "Much better," she assured me. "Your father has been very attentive, and the doctor was wonderful." She adjusted my medication, which seems to be helping. I glanced around the cabin. "Where's Melissa?" Mom's expression clouded slightly. "She didn't come home last night. She texted her father this morning to say she was staying with her friend Aubrey." The information didn't surprise me, but it still stung to know that Melissa had essentially abandoned the family in the middle of a health crisis. "Has she asked about you at all?" Mom shook her head. "I don't think your father told her I wasn't feeling well. He didn't want to worry her. Or give her the opportunity to demonstrate whether she would care enough to come back," I thought. Instead, I asked, "Have you eaten lunch yet?" "I can make you something." "Your father brought me soup a little while ago," Mom said, then added with a small smile. It was from a can, but he heated it perfectly. The image of my father, who rarely ventured into cooking, carefully preparing canned soup for my mother, brought an unexpected lump to my throat. Perhaps my departure had forced some necessary changes in the family dynamic already. I spent the afternoon keeping Mom company. I had a good talk with your father after you left, she confided when Dad stepped out to buy more ice. I told him some hard truths about how I felt enabling Melissa all these years. It wasn't an easy conversation, but it was necessary. How did he take it? I asked, genuinely curious. Better than I expected, Mom admitted. I think seeing you stand up for yourself shocked him into reconsidering some things. He admitted he's been unfair to you and far too permissive with Melissa. The acknowledgement was validating, even secondhand. Do you think anything will actually change? Mom squeezed my hand. Change doesn't happen overnight, especially with patterns as old as these. But I believe we've taken the first steps. Early evening brought the sound of a car in the driveway. Melissa's rental. She entered the cabin alone, stopping short when she saw me sitting with Mom. You're back, she said, her tone unreadable. Mom had a health scare yesterday, I replied, not bothering to soften the information. Her blood sugar dropped dangerously low. Dad had to take her to a doctor. Melissa paled visibly. What? Why didn't anyone call me? Would you have answered? I asked. Or were you too busy with your new friends to care about your family? Olivia, Mom warned gently. Melissa's expression cycled rapidly through shock, guilt, and defensiveness. I would have come back if I'd known, she insisted. Is she okay? Are you okay, Mom? I'm fine now, Mom assured her. Just tired. The doctor adjusted my medication. Melissa approached hesitantly and perched on the arm of the couch near Mom. I'm sorry I wasn't here. The apology seemed genuine, which caught me off guard. I had expected more defensiveness. Mom patted Melissa's hand. You're here now. Dad returned with the ice and groceries, pausing briefly when he saw Melissa, but offering a neutral greeting. The four of us existed in an awkward truce for the remainder of the evening. Everyone careful with their words, the recent conflicts hovering unspoken in the air. After dinner, which I prepared while Dad insisted on handling the dishes, Melissa approached me on the deck. I didn't know Mom was sick, she said without preamble. I would have come back. I believe you, I replied, surprising myself with the realization that I did. Melissa could be selfish and thoughtless, but she loved Mom in her own way. Melissa leaned against the railing, looking out at the lake. I've been thinking about what you said about me never taking responsibility, always expecting everyone to accommodate me. I stayed silent, giving her space to continue. I'm not good at being reliable, she admitted. Not like you. It's easier to be the fun one, the spontaneous one. No one expects anything from me except entertainment. That's not entirely true, I said. Mom and Dad expect you to be an adult who considers others, especially when it comes to Mom's health. And I expect you to be a sister who sees me as a person with needs, not just a convenient resource to handle whatever you don't want to deal with. Melissa nodded slowly. I can see how I've been taking advantage. Not intentionally, but the result is the same. She turned to face me directly. I can't promise I'll suddenly become as responsible as you overnight, but I am sorry for how I've treated you, especially on this trip. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was more self-awareness than Melissa had ever demonstrated. Thank you for saying that. So, where do we go from here? She asked. One day at a time, I replied, starting with finishing this vacation with as little drama as possible for Mom's sake. The final 2 days of our family vacation passed in a state of cautious reconciliation. Melissa actually joined us for meals and activities, though she did slip away once to say goodbye to her local friends. More significantly, she made an effort to help with Mom, offering to get her medications or asking if she needed anything. Dad, too, showed subtle but meaningful changes. He consulted me about activities suitable for Mom rather than automatically deferring to Melissa's preferences. He stepped up with practical tasks without being asked. And most importantly, he began to hold Melissa accountable for her commitments, giving her a pointed look when she was late for breakfast on our final day. On the morning of our departure, as we packed the cars, Mom pulled me aside. Thank you, she said simply. For what? For having the courage to speak your truth, even when it was painful. Sometimes a family needs a disruption to see the patterns they're trapped in. I hugged her tightly. I'm sorry I left you. Don't be, she insisted. That act of self-respect did more to change things than years of silent accommodation ever could. The drive home was split between the two cars, Dad and Mom in the SUV, Melissa and I in her rental. This arrangement, suggested by Dad, forced Melissa and me to spend several hours in close quarters, navigating conversation without the buffer of our parents. It was awkward at first, but gradually, we found our way to more honest communication than we'd had in years. Melissa admitted feeling jealous of my closeness with Mom, especially since her health issues began. I confessed to resenting her freedom and the way she seemed exempt from family responsibilities. I've always admired how together you are, Melissa said at one point, surprising me. You make adulting look effortless. I laughed. Trust me, it's not. I'm constantly worried I'm doing it wrong. You worried about doing something wrong? I thought that was my department. The shared laughter felt like the beginning of something new. Not a complete resolution, but a crack in the wall that had grown between us over the years. Back home, the changes that began at the lake continued to unfold gradually. 3 months after our eventful vacation, we gathered for family dinner. Mom's health had stabilized. The most remarkable change was in our family dynamic. Dad consulted me about important decisions. Mom was more forthright about her needs. And Melissa, while still Melissa in many ways, made visible efforts to be more considerate, calling Mom regularly and even remembering Dad's birthday without a reminder. As for me, I discovered that speaking up for myself didn't cause the family to fall apart, as I had feared. If anything, it strengthened us by replacing unhealthy patterns with more honest communication. I began setting clearer boundaries around my time and energy, and to my surprise, my family largely respected them. The vacation that I thought had been ruined turned out to be transformative in ways I never expected. By standing up for myself, even when it meant being cast as the villain temporarily, I had initiated necessary changes that benefited everyone. The pain and conflict had been worth it for the healthier family dynamic that emerged. I learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your family is to love yourself enough to demand respect. That setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's essential for authentic relationships. And most importantly, that it's never too late to change family patterns that no longer serve anyone well. Our main vacation wasn't the idyllic experience I had planned, but it gave us something more valuable, a new understanding of each other, and the courage to create healthier ways of being family. In the end, that was worth more than any perfect vacation could have been. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself with family, even when it made you temporarily the bad guy? Share your experience in the comments below.